Yeah, thanks, Nivedita. So I split your query or question in two parts, and welcome all. Hope you all are taking very well care of yourself in this unprecedented time. So about the clinical research, what I will articulate is about the one of the component within the clinical research about the clinical trials. It's a big industry in the sense of the figures which I have read on recent updates is about 2020. It was around $200 billion. Now that's a kind of a landscape currently. If you try to look at in terms of the numbers, if you want to look at it. Now, if you look at the clinical trial perspective, now classical example which also Sanjay Zolpe has articulated about in terms of the unprecedented time we have gone, the scientific community, the clinical researchers communities have raised the bar of the research in a sense that within 1 year, we are having almost like I'm basically more of a vaccinologist. I have more examples, so my sharing of example will be related to the vaccines per se as such. So 11 vaccines got an approval. They call an emergency use approval within 1 year. Now this is historical. If you try to look at the kind of the timelines that usually it requires to one vaccines to get an approval to reach to the market, from the basic research, from the lab what we have understood about it, from the lab to the phase 1 to 2 3, and then later on into the market, having the getting the vaccines to the beneficiaries of the target audience, it takes almost 10 years to 30 years, maybe more. Malaria vaccines is a classical example. Since last 30 years, we have been working on it. Scientific community has been working on it. Still, it's in the phase 4. And other end, there are kind of a vaccines which has been designed and developed in 10 years, 15 years, kind of a. So the point I'm trying to articulate is a very resource intensive activity. It requires huge money in terms of resources. It requires kind of a very kind of a timeline that is required. It required skilled manpower, and skilled manpower because this particular industry is very regulated. Regulated in because the motto of clinical research, sorry, within that the clinical trial perspective is do no harm. Safety is a more primary focus of all the kind of research which is throughout the phase, from basic research, phase 1 to the market. Safety is the prime most importance, and within that, do no harm. So within that perspective, if you look at the landscape, if your interest is in basic scientist, you have a basic researcher, you did some kind of a microbiology, and then you want to understand the nitty-gritties about it, you're doing some kind of a course, you will be, I think you'll be able to do much better in terms of the, because ultimately what is coming out of that basic lab is to be made transformed into what is required at the community level. So that in a nutshell, if I want to summarize what you have asked about it, if you have an inclinations toward the research, the landscape is too big. You have to pick and select which areas you would like to go. If you can do your own strength mapping, try to allocate to that part of it. And I have been in this particular role almost like within my 28 years of career, almost like last 14 15 years and all that, because I'm looking at both the spectrum, the clinical research as well as the kind of a public health perspective. And I can relate the stories here in the sense, once you have that basic understanding and the skills can be improved upon, knowledge can be gained, all those kind of a components and all that, then I'll put it as sky is the limit for the clinical researchers if interested. Now coming to your second query in terms of, thanks to prime me about the objective, priming me in advance about the objectives of this particular session. So I just prepared one single slide. So I would like to share to the audience today who are participating in today's webinar. Just give me a second. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir, we can see.
Just a minute. Okay. So just to give an overview of clinical trial. So again, clinical trial is a subset of clinical research as a broad area per se. Now, clinical trial basically means there is some kind of an intervention. Now, intervention, it could be a drug, it could be a device, it could be a vaccine. Now, this intervention are very, very focused because it's a kind of a very, very regulated as articulated. Not only regulated, you have to go in a very systematic way. There is no room for a chaotic scenarios. You have to be very well organized. You have to have all the time scale. We take some examples of that. Uh, just screen is getting blocked.
We can see,
Oh,
sir.
okay. I'm just something is coming on the screen which is blocking my view. No issues. I can go without that, without looking at what is there in the first. So I hope everyone is able to see the couple of animation that has gone. So first on the left hand side, what you're looking at is a couple of like even in the previous sessions you have seen about the clinical research organization. Now, what is the clinical research organizations? They are the people who support clinical research in the community. They are the specialized forces where they hire or have the people who have a kind of an different skill sets. They as a group, so they are supporting clinical research whosoever wants to. Most of the time, the pharmaceutical companies either they themselves do it or they take a kind of a support of the CROs to get it done. Now, academic institutes are more focused towards the basic research as such. There are, and then there will be an independent organizations. They are independent in the sense that they do not have any kind of a interest. There is no business interest or any kind of a component and all that. It's more of the from the societal perspective and all that. So there are many examples about those organizations. They also are interested in the implementation research and all that, or there are the basic researchers as well. So broadly, what I'm trying to give a landscape of the different domains where the research or the clinical trials are being conducted. On the right hand side, there is a clinical trial sites. Now, the clinical trial sites are basically where it's getting implemented. The the whatever the research objective is, whatever is like now I would like to test a COVID-19 vaccine. The basic researchers, the phase one, phase two have given me a confidence that it will work very well. The immune response will be good in the community. I should go forward and all that part of it. So there is a company who will take it forward into the implementations perspective. So how it will should get implemented in the sense we need to have a clinical research site. What is a clinical research site? Basically, these are the big hospitals, those who have the institutional setups, those who have a community setup. Depending on the objectives, there are different kind of either the institutional clinical trials or it could be a community-based clinical trials. So based on those sets, because they are the people, those who are interacting with the patients on the regular basis, they are the people who are at the front end having a kind of an interaction with the participants as such. So the recruitment, the enrollment will happen at the clinical trial sites. So these are like I'll take one example where we do a clinical trial like KEM Hospital Pune, or it could be they have a field site in Wadu, which is in again a Pune, which is a very demographic profiles as is very well known. Because of this demographic profiles, it is easier to have a kind of an access to the communities, to have a kind of a building the repos, to have those kind of consentings and all the intervention that needs to be done. So it's again needs to be done in a very particular, very systematic ways. So we try to look at that. So clinical trials sites becomes an important component. Now on the left hand side, they are being called mostly the sponsors. Pharmaceutical companies is bringing a product to the is trying to do a research on a particular product, they become the sponsor. Now sponsor is does not by meaning, it doesn't mean that they are kind of a paying the amount or something like that. Sponsor in regulated terms, basically they are accountable for whatever is happening under the umbrella of that particular clinical trial. So accountability, whosoever, even if let's assume I am a company and I am hiring a CRO and I'm trying to implement a research clinical trial into that, I am accountable as a company. CRO is not accountable. They are just making a kind of a things. The process is at the implementation level. So coming to the sponsor now coming to the some of the blue boxes, what you're looking at, it's what kind of a jobs that are available within the sponsors, whichever it at the academic level or the independent organ, all that, how the clinical trials are structured. If you understand then you will be able to fit yourself which domain or which area would like to progress into your careers as such. One is a medical. Now, as a medical professionals, because regulatory, there are some regulatory norms where there is a requirement. A person has to be a physician to implement certain kinds of roles and all that. So under the medical, there are the three nomenclatures. I have just put it across. This nomenclatures may differ from organization to organizations, or from the different domains where we are working and all that. CEPL is nothing but clinical epidemiological lead kind of a concept. Now, clinical epidemiological lead concept is what? Let's assume if I'm working on a respiratory disease, I need to, as a clinician, I should be an expert into that domain. I need to know the basics about the physiologies. I need to the basic the pathogenesis, what kind of a viruses or bacteria or the organisms cause the respiratory disease. So over a period of time, I had designed and developed a niche for myself into a particular area of the respiratory domain. So whenever there are the trials happening around the respiratories and all that, I know the epidemiology of the disease and all that. I over a period of time, I can go above and reach to the level of CEPL. Similarly, what is a CRDL? CRDL kind of a one level lower than that the clinical research development lead. So basically, if let's assume I'm a respiratory physician, I am a CPL, there may be many kind of a research going on under that umbrella. So couple of disease domains will be given to one person, couple of other disease will be given to other domains and all that. So CRDL have a kind of a subsections of what the CEPL overall is looking after and all that. And the third one is what is a kind of, we call it a local medical lead. What does that local medical lead? So let's assume, because most of the trials are global and then one trial is getting implemented in India. So India, there will be one medical person that will be allocated to that particular study. He is being labeled as a local medical lead. So all medical related activities or interventions or the safety reporting, etc., will basically be the domain of, or the responsibility of that particular LML as such. Now coming to the medical part. So medical part, I will put it as a kind of a very subset of the whole clinical trials per se, because what is documented is understood that what you have done. You cannot say I did this, I did that, I do in front of regulators, in front of your sponsors, in front of the at the implementation, that yes, I have already taken the consents and all that. You have to show the consent, you have to show those kind of a document. So whatever is documented is considered to be done, not documented not done. So again, it's a very kind of I'll put it as a more of a perfectionist kind of a role that needs to be done. Every word that is being the meaning, that are definitions and all that, needs to be articulated well and all that. So clinical operations teams are basically who are the implementers from the sponsor's perspective. There are the operations managers managing the larger teams. There are the senior development leads, or there are the local development leads as the LML and the CEPL, what I articulated. There are the clinical research associates. Now, clinical research associates may be responsible for one or two clinical trials or three clinical, depending on the depending on the protocol intensities of the research as such. Or it could be a clinical trial assistants who are basically managing one clinical trial, all documentations, trial master files, all. Because this is a kind of a thing, if I have learned clinical research in my later years, I have learned the maximum of my clinical trial. What I know today is from the clinical trial assistant, clinical trial researchers, because they are from day in and day out, they are working at the implementations level. So they become my mentor in terms of my learnings, on the job learning that has happened over a period of time. Now third one is basically there is a back. So this medical clinical, these are the front end. They are working in the front, they are working with the investigators and all that. So they are having some interactions with therefore I call them as a kind of a front end team. But there is a back end team. Back end team basically also equally important is their role. They're like that some of the roles which has articulated in the previous sessions, like data manager. There are epidemiologists. Like I need to do a kind of a protocol writing as a scientific writer. So I will take some kind of a clue from the epidemiology, what the disease look like, how it is behaving currently, what is the current knowledge that needs to be documented, because the protocol will be depending on the current knowledge of that particular disease per se. Over a period of time it will change. That's a different part of the story. So what is the current, or what historically somebody has done it, somebody should know it. So epidemiologists are the best people to give that kind of a guidance to the scientific writers. Okay, this is the fact, these are the things, and then based on that the scientific writer will be starting to write a protocol related to that particular clinical trials per se. Statistics, again, a kind of a very different kind of a thing, a specialized area. If you're interested in mathematics, statistics, or you believe that you have that kind of a knack into that area, is a wonderful area to grow over a period of time. Regulatory. Now, being a regulated environment, you have to have an updated knowledge. We can't say, sorry, I was ignorant, and that's the reason that error happened. We do not have that kind of an excuse. So somebody has to be a regulatory expert into that whole team as such, who will be able to guide. Informed consent is to be taken in this particular format. These are the things. These are to be included. These are not to be included. Audiovisual consenting are required, not required. So there is a person who will be taking care of the regulatory part of the scientific writer, protocol writing, clinical research documents, and everything. So there is a huge work. Again, if your writing skills are good, again, that area, and if you have that kind of research thought process and all that, it will be a good area to grow as such. And publications, whatever the papers, peer-reviewed papers, publications, and all that is like, again, itself is an art. I put it above as a kind of a more than the science, it's more of an art. You have to understanding of all the nitty-gritties of the topics you are writing, because ultimately that will be influencing the certain policies, that will be influencing certain decisions. So publications is again another important component if you are interested in that domain as such. Going to going to the this one, the clinical trial side. So at the clinical trial side, there is an investigator who is a principal investigator or sub investigator, depending on how many research they are doing. There is a clinical research coordinator, there is a lab coordinator, there is a field coordinator if there is a field site. Because there are certain clinical trials where you have to do a effectiveness trials, or you have to do an efficacy trial where you have to do the actual follow-up. So efficacy trials cannot happen at the institutional level. Immunogenicity levels, yes, immune response, what the currently the most of the research around the COVID is happening at the immune response level, that can be done at the institutional level. But actual proof is happens when you have the kind of an efficacies related to that scenarios, which you have to have a kind of a field. So there is a field coordinator which becomes an important participant in the tool. Now, last two sections, I'll just point to, these are some of the nitty-gritties, some job roles I just try to give what is actual job profile that are being required and what kind of a roles you can play into once you have a kind of a basic understanding of the clinical research as such. Now, more importantly, you have to have the skills. Skills, I am a believer that skills can be developed. There may be some individual with inborn skills and all that, but yes, it can be developed. So there are soft skills, there are technical skills and all that. Now, soft skill, one of the important my learning over a period of time, I'll put a very most focused feedback to you or suggestion to you is networking. These are the right time from your students' days. Networking is one of the important skills you need to develop. You should not get right, like you have to build your own environment. You have to build a kind of a linkages with the people who are already into the different domains. You can learn from them. You can understand many more things. It's not only to get the jobs. Networking will help you build your career in a completely different format. So from the day once you join a kind of a, any kind of an graduation or post graduations, at the time if you are thinking aloud to go a long way into your career, networking is an important component. Communication skills, an area where I believe myself is not a kind of a perfect person as such. However, whatsoever and all that, I believe over a period of time, communication is a most important component or a skill that is required. Both writing skills and the communication in terms of the verbal language, the verbal communications as such. Very important, because you should be able to articulate what you are intended to articulate. What is the intent or what is the objective in your mind? Because the words also plays an important role. That communication skills becomes very important in the clinical research domains, because something which you are trying to articulate. Documentation skills, like if have you seen, I have learned many more things in documentation from the librarians. The kind of a meticulous documentations they do, the filings and all those kind of a thing, the systemic ways of classifying the different kind of a books and all that. So there are many various mechanisms. So itself is a kind of a whole field where you can have a flourishing careers into your domains. One important skills which I believe again is basically eye for details, reading between the lines, which I usually try to put it across. Sometimes not everything is being will be written into the black and white, the regulatory, even the regulatory guidance. Sometimes it will be confusing. So one should go with the intent. What is the intent of that guidance? And accordingly have to read in. So I for details is one of the important components I believe is an important skill set required. In the current context, if you look at the COVID, everything has gone haywire. There is a paradigm shift that will, I think, future landscape will change a bit, not the full completely, in a bit that there will be a kind of a more of a virtual monitoring. There will be kind of a more things that will happening at the digital platform. So one should have those skills related to, and I think the current generations is very well tech savvy, and they are very well updated with the. But again, if you have some kind of a skills, you can improve upon those. That will be very helpful into your career as well. Coming to the again, I will not go in the details because already it was been very well taken by the previous in the previous session. The different topics where you need to learn, you need to understand the nitty-gritties of the specifics and all that part of it. What I'll make a comment is one last by making a last statement from this roles and skill that excellence is an attitude. It is not a skill. It's up to you how you want to build. So excellence is a word that is to be shown by your action, and that will be comprising of all the skills you develop over a period of time, so all the knowledge you gain through your different courses, through your networking, through the kind of a structured courses, also having an applied kind of internship at some places and all that. But excellence is something by virtue of your doing or by actually implementing, you will be learning many more things beyond classrooms. Thanks, Nivedita. That's it. If you have any specific queries, then we can take it.